The Moabites. Who were they really? Their story, it's one that kicks off amidst the dying embers and the still smoldering ruins of something lost. A saga, essentially, hammered out in the intensely searing heat of the fire that devoured the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. When the heavens themselves seemed to split open, unleashing a torrent of flames over the valley of Siddim, and those cities just crumbled to nothing under the sheer weight of sulfur and divine wrath. Well, the world as many knew it simply ceased to exist. From those vast, desolate ashes, only a handful of folks managed to claw their way out of the tragedy. Lot, Abraham's nephew, along with his two daughters, completely disoriented and utterly exhausted, were left to wander through the wreckage of what had once been their home. They scaled the mountains, carrying with them little more than the gnawing pain of survival and the haunting memories of a past now utterly obliterated. And there, among the jagged rocks and an almost deafening silence, began the journey of a brand new people, the Moabites. They were born not just from tragedy, but also from something of a strange and genuinely mysterious providence. The very name, Moab, which translates to "from my father," is both a stinging mark of shame and, at the same time, a powerful symbol of continuity. It serves as a constant reminder that even in the absolute worst circumstances, even rising from the blackest, most desolate ashes, life itself can somehow, impossibly, emerge. Throughout the pages of the Bible, the Moabites crop up as this constant back and forth, this ongoing oscillation between kinship and outright conflict. Descendants of Lot, yes, but also, undeniably, adversaries of Abraham's children. There are times when they extend a welcoming hand to Israel, like when Naomi, for example, found sanctuary and refuge within their land. But then there are other episodes, darker ones, where they morph into a genuine threat, leading God's people down the treacherous path of idolatry and ultimately into the horrors of battle. They faithfully reflect this constant struggle, this tug-of-war between grace and rebellion, between the promise of blessing and the stark reality of a curse. And yet, even with a history that's so profoundly marked by both soaring highs and devastating lows, the Moabites still offer us a pretty profound lesson about God Himself. A creator who actively works through the cracks and fissures of humanity, who somehow manages to find purpose even within our failures and our mistakes. From that cave, stained with shame and moral ambiguity, all the way to the very genealogy of Christ, Moab serves as a potent reminder that redemption has a real knack for popping up in the most unlikely and unexpected of places. The Bible, far from trying to conceal or gloss over the controversial origins of these people, actually presents them with a disarming and almost brutal honesty. It doesn't shy away from revealing the episode that set the entire Moabite story into motion. After their harrowing escape from Sodom, Lot and his daughters sought refuge in a cave somewhere near Zoar. They were convinced that they were the only survivors left on earth, and the daughters, driven by sheer desperation, made a pretty dramatic and, frankly, shocking decision to ensure the continuation of their family line. It was there, in that cave, that they hatched a plan that continues to echo through the corridors of history to this day. For 2 nights in a row, they got their own father drunk, and in a desperate, almost unthinkable gesture, they slept with him. A deed that was motivated by a potent cocktail of fear and the raw instinct to survive. Genesis 19 verses 30 to 38 recounts this episode in a detached, almost impersonal manner, presenting it as an undeniable fact. "Our father is old," they said, "and there are no men in this land to give us children. Let us make him drink wine and sleep with him to preserve our lineage." From the elder daughter was born Moab, and from the younger came Ben-Ammi, who would ultimately become the ancestor of the Ammonites. From that refuge, from that cave which was so deeply scarred by both pain and moral confusion, arose 2 nations that, over the course of centuries, would both intersect with and directly confront Israel's destiny. It's a story that began in a place of shame, but one that still has a whole lot to tell us. Even lurking in the shadows of this narrative, the ever-present thread of divine providence continues to shine brightly. Because God, in his unfathomable sovereignty, possesses the power to transform even the most desolate ruins into the seeds of redemption. What man initiates in error, he can reshape and remold into something purposeful. Thus, the origin of the Moabites became a visible scar etched into Israel's collective memory, a stark reminder that blood can unite, but sin has the power to separate. The people of Israel viewed Moab as this perplexing reflection, this strange combination of kinship and outright foreignness, of deep-seated bonds and a palpable threat. They couldn't simply cast them aside, because the Moabites descended directly from Lot, Abraham's own nephew, and were therefore, in a very real sense, part of his lineage. Yet, at the same time, they couldn't fully embrace them without reservation either, because Moab's roots were firmly planted in a past that was undeniably marked by shame and dishonor. This difficult, often fraught relationship reflects, in a rather peculiar way, how God often chooses the most unlikely of candidates to fulfill his divine will. He who fashioned Adam from the very dust of the earth and brought forth an entire nation from Sarah's barren womb would not hesitate to reveal a divine purpose born from Lot's cave, a place defined by both fear and sin. And from this seemingly impure origin, he would raise up a woman named Ruth, the Moabitess. Her unexpected and vibrant faith would ultimately unite her with the very lineage of the Messiah, demonstrating that divine mercy has the capacity to penetrate far deeper than any human dishonor. The story of Moab, with its tainted origins and its redemptive destiny, echoes a profound and enduring truth. God's purpose is never, ever limited by a broken beginning. If you could somehow look down from above, from the heights along the eastern edge of the Dead Sea, you'd see the ancient territory of Moab stretching out between the Arnon and Zered valleys, a land characterized by gentle, rolling hills and surprisingly fertile valleys. Vineyards would spread out across the slopes, and flocks of sheep would graze peacefully beneath the region's unrelenting sun. The sheer beauty of the natural landscape seems, on the surface, to be at odds with the temperament of its people, a people burdened with a deep sense of pride, a reverent sense of fear, but also a rebellious streak that often kept them at a distance from God's blessings. When the Israelites, on their journey from Egypt to the Promised Land, happened to cross the territory of Moab, God gave Moses a very clear and explicit command: "Do not harass Moab or provoke them to war, for I have given Ar as a possession to the descendants of Lot." Deuteronomy 2, verse 9. Even with the clear stains of their past, the Moabites carried the indelible mark of kinship with Lot and were, as a direct consequence, connected to the covenant that God had established with Abraham. Israel was therefore instructed to respect this divine grant, even though there remained a considerable spiritual separation and a palpable emotional distance between the two nations. However, this period of relative peace between them didn't last for very long. King Balak, catching sight of the approaching Israelite encampment, was immediately seized by a potent wave of fear. The sheer size and power of Israel, its immense numbers, sent him spiraling into a state of near panic. Instead of attempting to engage in dialogue or seeking some form of peaceful understanding, Balak made the fateful decision to try and curse them. He summoned Balaam, a foreign prophet renowned for his almost mythical mystery and his supposed supernatural power, offering him vast riches in exchange for placing a curse upon the Israelites. Numbers 22. But God, as he so often does, intervened sovereignly. The very words that were intended for condemnation were miraculously transformed into blessings, revealing, once again, that divine will ultimately triumph over the flawed schemes of humanity. Yet the story of Moab didn't simply end there. The Moabite people, though spared by divine intervention, ultimately chose a path that was riddled with sin. Moabite women, with their enticing promises of pleasure and their seductive beauty, began to approach the Israelite men. What initially seemed harmless enough, a simple interaction between neighboring peoples, soon morphed into a dangerous spiritual trap. These women not only seduced the Israelite men, but they actively led them into the clutches of idolatry, causing them to worship Baal of Peor, a pagan god who was heavily associated with both fertility and a whole host of immoral rituals. The cult of Baal of Peor was particularly infamous for its extreme levels of corruption. Worship of this deity went far beyond simple prayers or sacrifices. It involved utterly dishonorable practices, including ritual prostitution and the offering of both goods and sacrifices in exchange for material and spiritual blessings. These Moabite women, by seducing the Israelite men, drew them away from the pure and unwavering worship of God and led them down a slippery slope towards spiritual degradation. Idolatry spread like wildfire among the Israelites, affecting even their leaders, who became corrupted by Baal's impure and depraved rituals. What began as a carnal and superficial desire ultimately spiraled into a devastating spiritual tragedy, a plague sent directly from God. This divine epidemic decimated the lives of countless Israelites, and the nation only began to recover and be restored when Phinehas, filled with righteous zeal and unwavering courage, acted decisively to put an end to the idolatry and purify the camp. Numbers 25. This deeply painful episode underscored the sheer seriousness of worshiping the one true God and the dire consequences of straying from his divine will. These events highlight Moab's inherently complex duality. On one hand, it was a nation that was undeniably tied to Abraham's bloodline and directly connected to God's covenant. On the other hand, it was a nation that was deeply marked by rebellion and rampant idolatry. There seemed to be this constant undercurrent of grace running alongside a powerful and destructive current of rebellion. Over the years, Moab actually prospered. Its highlands, fertile and naturally protected by mountains, became a haven of both power and immense wealth. Flocks multiplied at an astonishing rate, harvests flourished, and the people's confidence grew in direct proportion to their burgeoning military strength. Under kings like Eglon, Moabite pride reached its zenith. The very nation that had once cowered in fear of Israel now held it firmly in subjugation. For 18 long years, during the tumultuous time of the Judges, Israel lived under the oppressive yoke of Moab. Judges 3 verses 12 to 14. But the relentless wheel of divine history is always turning, and the reign of pride, as it inevitably does, simply cannot last forever. God raised up an unlikely deliverer in the form of Ehud, a man of both cunning and extraordinary courage, who managed to infiltrate Eglon's palace under the guise of diplomacy. And there, standing before the obese and utterly complacent king, he executed the Lord's vengeance. In an instant, Moab's seemingly unshakable power crumbled into dust. Israel rose up in rebellion, and the land once again breathed the sweet air of freedom. Thus, once again, the cycle repeated itself: pride, conquest, judgment, and the inevitable fall. The tragic rhythm that accompanied Moab throughout the centuries. At the very heart of this nation lay the worship of Chemosh, the vengeful warrior god of Moab. He received all the glory for their victories and absorbed all the fury for their defeats. Centuries later, an archaeological discovery known as the Mesha stele, or the Moabite stone, would reveal King Mesha's own words, boasting of how Chemosh directly guided him in battles against Israel. It was an ancient voice of pagan pride, still echoing powerfully from the stones of the desert. But the Bible paints a far darker and more disturbing portrait of this God. Chemosh demanded blood sacrifices, and in times of utter desperation, even the children of kings were offered up in horrific holocausts. 2 Kings 3 verse 27. It was a cult that was undeniably marked by extreme cruelty, a faith that was built on a foundation of fear. While Israel worshipped the God who both creates and actively preserves life, Moab bowed down before a deity that actively devoured it. The prophets, in their unwavering commitment to truth, raised their voices in protest against this rampant idolatry. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they all proclaimed impending judgment on Moab, denouncing not only their deep-seated spiritual corruption, but also their almost unbearable arrogance. "We have heard of the pride of Moab," Isaiah declared. "How great is her arrogance! Her boasts and pride are futile. Her fury amounts to nothing." Isaiah 16 verse 6. Yet, even as the decree of utter destruction was being pronounced, God's own heart was filled with grief. "My heart cries out for Moab," lamented Isaiah. This enduring tension between justice and compassion runs like a river throughout the entire scripture. Divine wrath is never cold or indifferent. It springs forth from the very same heart that loves deeply and passionately desires to restore that which has been tragically lost. In Moab, we see a powerful mirror reflecting humanity itself, a nation that rose to incredible heights of strength and influence, only to fall prey to the seductive allure of pride, and yet remain perpetually within the reach of God's lament. The Moabites serve as a constant reminder of a profound and timeless truth. Sin always separates us, but grace never ceases in its tireless effort to seek a way back. Over the centuries, Moab continued to oscillate wildly between periods of glory and periods of utter ruin, between the intoxicating heights of power and the crushing depths of desolation. They faced off against King Saul, challenged David, and later rebelled against the kings of Judah, each insurrection ending in the same predictable fashion, in abject failure. Their once mighty fortresses crumbled into ruins, their fertile fields withered and died under the crushing weight of disobedience. And yet, even amidst the ruins of their deeply flawed history, God didn't simply erase them from the map of his providence. From the ashes of Moab arose a woman whose name would echo forever through the pages of redemption, Ruth, the Moabitess. Born into a people condemned by history, she was embraced by grace and became an inseparable part of Israel's sacred lineage. Her unwavering loyalty and her steadfast faith bound her forever to the divine plan, and through her flowed the very blood of Christ. Thus, Moab's darkest chapters ultimately set the stage for a light that would never be extinguished. Its idolatry exposed the inherent falsity of gods that ultimately consume, and its tragic fall revealed the unwavering justice of the one true God. And, finally, its redemption through Ruth revealed the unfathomable depths of a mercy that ultimately triumphs over all. The Moabites were far more than just some distant people relegated to the dusty pages of ancient history. They were, in essence, a mirror reflecting the human condition itself, born of fear, hardened by pride, and yet never, ever beyond the ultimate reach of redemption. They demonstrate that God doesn't limit himself solely to the heroes of history. He actively works through the wounded, the forgotten, and the undeniably unlikely. From Lot's cave all the way to Ruth's unwavering faith, Moab's trajectory takes us on a journey from shame to grace, from scandal to salvation. In the end, it's our own story being reflected back at us. Fallen creatures, yes, but still relentlessly sought after, broken, undeniably, but never beyond the possibility of healing. And when we revisit Moab's saga, we don't simply read a tragedy. We encounter a powerful testimony to a God who has the power to transform ashes into fertile soil, and from the most desolate of ruins, bring forth the promise of redemption. Sometimes, God's most miraculous and profound acts begin in the least likely of places. Imagine the scene: arid hills stretching out as far as the eye can see, dusty roads winding into the distance, and a family desperately fleeing the ravages of famine. Bethlehem, ironically named the House of Bread, now suffered from scarcity and deprivation. Driven by sheer necessity, Elimelech, his wife Naomi, and their two sons made the difficult decision to leave everything they had ever known behind and cross the Jordan River into the land of Moab. A nation once despised and held in contempt, now transformed into a refuge. It's one of those divine reversals that only providence itself could possibly orchestrate. The people born from Lot's shame now sheltered the descendants of Abraham's promise. And it was there, amidst the silent fields of Moab, that one of Scripture's most moving and enduring stories began to blossom: the story of Ruth. Naomi's sons took Moabite wives, Orpah and Ruth, but grief soon descended upon them. Elimelech died, and shortly after, so did his two sons. 3 widows remained, utterly consumed by sorrow and uncertainty. Naomi, understandably consumed by bitterness, decided to return to her homeland. She asked her daughters-in-law to remain in Moab and attempt to restart their lives among their own people. Orpah, weeping openly, reluctantly obeyed. But Ruth, the foreigner, the improbable one, chose an entirely different path. Her words, spoken in a moment of profound decision, have echoed powerfully through eternity. "Do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from following you," she declared. "For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." Ruth 1 verse 16. With this simple but incredibly powerful declaration, Ruth shattered barriers of blood, culture, and religion. She left behind her gods, her homeland, and her sense of security, and embraced the God of Israel with a pure and silent faith. Unknowingly, she was about to become an integral part of the most sacred thread in the entire story of redemption. In Bethlehem, Ruth would become a potent symbol of both fidelity and enduring hope. By the invisible hand of God, she met Boaz, a just and compassionate man who was also a relative of Elimelech. What might have initially seemed like nothing more than a simple romance ultimately became an act of divine restoration. Boaz, acting as a kinsman redeemer, married Ruth, ensuring not only her survival, but the continuation of Naomi's lineage. And from this union was born Obed, the father of Jesse and the grandfather of King David. Just think of the sheer beauty of it all. A Moabite woman, hailing from a people marked by shame and disgrace, ultimately became the great-grandmother of Israel's greatest king. And through David's house would come the Messiah, Jesus Christ, the Redeemer of the world. When the evangelist Matthew traced the genealogy of Christ, he made sure to meticulously record this particular detail. Salmon fathered Boaz by Rahab, he wrote. Boaz fathered Obed by Ruth. Obed fathered Jesse, and Jesse fathered David the king. Matthew 1 verses 5 to 6. It was as if God wanted to constantly remind us that His grace has never been limited by borders, race, or reputation. Divine love flourishes even in the soils most deeply scarred by shame. Ruth's story essentially rewrites the very destiny of Moab. From a people long associated with sin and idolatry arises a crucial link in the lineage of the Savior. In Ruth, the gospel is foreshadowed with incredible clarity. A foreign heart welcomed, a forgotten name grafted in, and a lost soul transformed into an eternal blessing. Through her, the scar left in Lot's cave becomes the fertile ground of Bethlehem's manger. And through her, God declares to all generations, "My grace is far greater than your past." But while Ruth's faith shone like a brilliant flame in the darkness, The rest of Moab's story slowly began to fade on the horizon. Nations that rise without justice inevitably vanish. After centuries of both power and constant confrontations with Israel and other neighboring kingdoms, Moab began to lose its strength and influence. Its lands were repeatedly invaded, first by the kings of Israel, such as Saul and David, and later by the powerful empires of Assyria and Babylon. Borders shrank, temples fell into disrepair, and their gods proved unable to protect them. The Mesha inscription, discovered in the 19th century, offers a fleeting glimpse into this long-lost world. Carved into ancient stone, King Mesha boasts of his victories over Israel, attributing his success directly to Chemosh, his god. Yet the Bible tells an entirely different story. Moabite pride led only to defeat and utter ruin. 2 Kings 3. What men build in arrogance, God reveals with absolute clarity. When the Babylonian exile finally came, the Moabites, once so proud and self-assured, were utterly broken. The prophets had already warned, Moab will be destroyed as a nation because it defied the Lord. Jeremiah 48, verse 42. And so it came to pass. Cities such as Ar, Nebo, and Kiriathaim became silent ruins. The people were gradually absorbed by neighboring tribes, and the name Moab slowly disappeared from human memory. Under the Persian and Roman empires, Moab ceased to exist as a distinct nation. Its idols fell silent, its language was lost to the ages, and history seemed to have all but forgotten these people. But the Bible has not forgotten. It keeps the memory of Moab alive, not to shame or condemn them, but to teach us. They became a powerful example of how pride ultimately destroys, and how grace has the power to restore. Every broken Moabite stone carries with it a silent but powerful warning. Power without justice perishes, and no God made by human hands has the capacity to save the soul. The only name that truly endures is that of the Lord. Although Moab's story ended in silence, it continues to speak volumes to us today. Its tragic fall reminds us that sin will eventually erase whatever pride attempts to build. But Ruth's remarkable redemption demonstrates that grace has the potential to rebuild whatever sin has destroyed. The Moabite story is, in many ways, a divine paradox. A people born of shame, judged for their persistent rebellion, and yet ultimately redeemed through unwavering faith. A scandalous beginning, a turbulent middle, and a mysterious end, but all unfolding under the watchful and purposeful hand of God, who is constantly writing a greater narrative, not of inevitable ruin, but of enduring redemption. From Lot's cave to Ruth's cradle, and from Ruth's lineage all the way to the cross of Christ, the Moabite journey follows the path of divine mercy. The same God who brought forth life from Lot's destruction ultimately brought forth eternal life through Mary's womb in Bethlehem, the very town where Ruth once gleaned in the fields. Their story relentlessly bends towards grace, demonstrating that our past does not and cannot disqualify us from God's ultimate plan. He can transform pain, failure, and even rejection into fertile soil for redemption. The Moabites remind us that God's mercy knows no borders, no cultural limitations, and no genealogical restrictions. His grace is like a powerful river that flows freely across deserts and wastelands. In judgment, we see the seriousness of sin. In destruction, the devastating consequences of pride. But in Ruth, we catch a glimpse of the very heart of God, a God who welcomes the foreigner, transforms misfortune into destiny, and chooses the most unlikely of candidates to showcase his incredible glory. It's no mere coincidence that Jesus was born near the ancient border of Moab. Light arose where there was once only darkness, and in Bethlehem's humble manger, the Moabite curse ultimately found its cure. So, what do we learn from the Moabites today? That God wastes absolutely nothing. Not our pain, not our mistakes, and certainly not our lineage. He can transform sin into salvation and a rejected nation into an integral part of his royal genealogy. Every time we read Ruth's name in Christ's genealogy, we are powerfully reminded that grace has no nationality and mercy knows no limits. From Lot's cave to Bethlehem's manger, from disgrace to ultimate glory, the story of Moab is, in a very real sense, the story of all of us, sinners saved by grace, foreigners welcomed home, and outcasts adopted into God's eternal family. Their enduring legacy does not reside in crumbling ruins or dusty relics, but in the redeemed hearts of all those who, like Ruth, can confidently say, "Your God shall be my God." Thank you for watching. May God bless you. See you soon.